I'll move on to the AST, whether it covers you in the event of a fire. So I've had quite a few landlords come to me with regards to what the landlord is liable to do in the event of a fire or something similar. So the first thing that I will mention is that be sure that you've got landlord's insurance and always make sure it's in date. I always put a reminder on my phone for when it's due to run out to make sure it gets renewed. And so there was a case last year, not last year, sorry. There was a case a few years ago whereby the tenant had left some hair straighteners on in the kitchen, and the result was they ended up having a fire, and the fire was not habitable because the tenant was upstairs and she didn't realise that they'd obviously caught fire. So the property had smoke alarms, but they only had battery operated ones, which is obviously the legal requirement. But when the landlord went to claim on their insurance, the insurance company denied liability because they deemed the property wasn't set up so that the tenant could be made aware of a fire as soon as possible. So, because there was no heat detector in the kitchen, which would then have obviously sounded off all the other alarms if there was interlinked, meaning that she would have heard it quickly and would have possibly been able to control the fire. So my advice would be just to spend that little bit extra and get yourself covered. We all know that insurance companies are likely to find any excuse not to pay out. And the end result was the landlord was left with nothing and lost the house completely, all because she followed the guidelines of the smoke alarms. That's one to bear in mind.
A couple
Is
of
it
points
worth mentioning carbon monoxide at this point?
Not yet, I've got it covered.
All right, okay. I was just going to say a couple of points on that. If you let your insurance lapse, it's probably in breach of your mortgage terms if you have a mortgage on the property.
Yeah.
That's something to bear in mind.
Yeah, so definitely always make sure that your landlord insurance is in date and look at what you're covered for as well. So the next thing to look at is the 4 ways in which you can end a contract, so your AST, which are the contracts has been completed, by frustration, negotiation and termination. The one I'm going to talk about is frustration, because that's what relates to this sort of scenario. So a contract becomes frustrated when either party cannot fulfill the terms of their agreement through no fault of their own. So for example, a fire or a flood or any other reason that is not your fault and you can't no longer continue the tenancy. So it's important that this frustration clause is in your agreement. You also need to check in your AST what your obligations are when situations like these arise and the property becomes uninhabitable. Are you as a landlord obliged to house the tenant or pay for the rehousing of the tenant? It is crucial to check your ASTs even if you use an agent. Ensure they have frustration of contracts so that they have a route out for you if you need to get under these, if you are in any of these circumstances. If you're using your own tenancy agreement and haven't changed your tenancy agreement for years, please look at it and update it, because the likelihood is it needs changing and updating, not just for this, but in general, the buy-to-let world is constantly changing, and you need to make sure that you are using a good up-to-date AST. Another quick point while speaking about ASTs is when it comes to serving your notices, look at the clauses that relates to serving notices in your AST and make sure you are serving your notices in line with what your tenancy states. If you don't, your notice will be deemed not served, meaning if you get to the point of having to attend court, you will not gain a possession order and you will need to have to start the whole process again from the beginning. So check your tenancies and make sure you fully understand them. So you don't want to, if you need to evict and you need to go to court, you don't want to have to wait the time of serving the notice and then getting back into court as well.